Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of Policy Watch with me, Rausan Pereira. The legislative bill that proposed to amend Shops and Establishment Act and to allow shops across Gujarat to function 24 hours was made effective from midnight on Wednesday, the foundation day of Gujarat. Deputy Chief Minister Nitin Patel announced this on Wednesday while adding that Gujarat will probably be the first state in India to implement such a law. Making an announcement in this regard, Patel said that the bill was passed in the previous session of the Gujarat Assembly and has now got the assent of President Ramnath Kovind. Patel said that implementing the bill will allow various shops in the state to function 24 hours and will generate more employment opportunities for the youth. The bill aims at improving the working conditions for workers, creating many more job opportunities for women, providing a favorable environment for doing business, ensuring women are permitted to work during night shifts with adequate safety and security provisions, and online registration through a simplified procedure. Expectations are that it will lead to growth in jobs, especially in retail, IT, hospitality and services sector. On this edition of Policy Watch, we will analyze the Gujarat government's decision to make 24/7 shops a reality. Joining me on the program today are Ajay, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director of the Business Standard, and Shankar, Aggarwal, former Secretary, Ministry of Labour and Employment. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Policy Watch. Mr. Dua, I'd like to begin the program with you. What your thoughts on the Gujarat government's decision to ensure that 24/7 shopping is a reality, at least in Gujarat?
A good move, I would say, for the purposes which you mentioned, creating greater employment opportunities, better working conditions, getting more women to come and taking care of this while taking care of their safety issues. This bill is more or less like the central bill which was adopted in 2016. That was a model bill. In a lot of concurrent list subjects, the union government comes out with a desirable kind of a course of action and leaving it to the states to adapt it to suit their needs, but while laying out the broad parameters of the goal. Maharashtra was the first state to adopt it. Gujarat is the second. Gujarat has also made it effective from the day before. I think the bill, while providing for shops to be open for 24/7, has taken care not to dilute the working hours. It still says that the working hours cannot exceed 9 hours at one go. Today the limit was 48 hours. That's 18 to 6. So it says maximum you can work at within that 48 hours. That remains for the week, but maximum you can work for 9 hours. And there has to be a break given after 5 hours. Meaning, as a matter of right. Second, women are now allowed to do the night shifts. Earlier they were not. It was meant to be protecting them, etc. But if it also was going to hit their economic welfare, we had to look at that condition. I think alongside this, this has happened at a time when 24/7 convenience stores are waiting to come into India. Gentlemen already in the retail trade, organized retail trade, has tied up with a famous brand in the US, 7-Eleven, which is convenient 24 hours, 24/7 convenience stores. And this Indian retailer is expected to start opening such convenience stores very quickly in the next, roll out new ones in the next few months itself.
Right.
I think a law like this would enable such shops to come up. It's a different issue, subject for discussion, whether having multi-brand retail, FDI and multi-brand retail, is it going to be impacting the mom and pop stores?
Yeah.
We can have a discussion on that separately.
Right.
But the issue of, from the labor point of view, employment point of view, I think all in all, a desirable move.
Okay. Mr. Shankar Aggarwal, let me bring you into the picture now. A point that Mr. Dua just raised about how the bill limits the working hours to 9 hours, allows women to come out and work, in the night shift. Is all of this implementable really?
Oh yes. You see, we created a model law in 2016. Since Shop and Establishment Act comes under the domain of the state government. So we thought that it will be a good idea to create a model law and let us send it to the state governments for adoption with some requisite or desirable amendments. Idea was that once a capital investment has been made, we should be able to reap benefit to its maximum. So that if a shop is established or an establishment is created, we should be able to take advantage of that establishment 24/7 rather than limiting it to only 8 hours, so that the capital cost will come down substantially for per unit of production of services or the goods, number one. Number two, it was basically for the establishments and not for the shops. Establishment means primarily for the IT sector. In IT sector, because we export large number of IT services and many of these services are required to be online all the time. And that means suppose you had to provide services to US or to Europe. So you had to be here during the orders. So during those orders, your establishment has to be open. And today, because of the rigid laws, and these laws were created way back in 40s and 50s. At that point of time, there was no IT kind of a thing. So now there was a requirement to amend these laws so that this establishment can be open throughout the day, number one, and throughout the night. And secondly, large number of girls and women are working in this organization. So we should give them an opportunity to work during the night also. The only thing is we had to ensure their safety and security, and for that, what we said that for the girls during the night, they had to be picked up from their houses and they had to be again dropped at their doors. So once we take care of the safety, security and other benefits of the workers, then it's a wonderful thing, it's a wonderful idea because it will give employment. And secondly, we are ensuring through law that each and every worker's right is protected, whether it is in terms of minimum wages or in terms of social security or in terms of safety and security.
Right. Mr. Bhattacharya, do you see any implementation challenges in the days to come?
Well, I think the implementation challenges will arise from two basic issues. One would be how do you ensure that labor exploitation doesn't reach a point where a person who is supposed to work not more than 48 hours a week or 9 hours during one uninterrupted session. So I think how do you make sure that it is not violated without the reintroduction of what is often called the Inspector Raj, in a sense that ensuring that the working classes are not exploited, because remember that the idea of 24/7 shops will create jobs only if those labor laws of 48 work hours a week per person is adhered to. If it is not adhered to, a person who is working for 9 hours will be made to work for 12 hours.
And so 2 shifts.
2 shifts. And so the entire benefit of new job generation will go for a toss. So therefore, it is very important, and my sense is that we need to strengthen the institutional framework, and it cannot be done by the same body that has framed the law, which is the government. It has to, that responsibility of implementing it and enforcing it has to come to a kind of a regulatory structure or regulatory body that must take upon itself the responsibility of implementing that the labor law rules. So I think that's number one challenge which will come up. Right now, it seems to me that probably our regulatory structure is not up to speed to tackle those challenges. And number two would be about providing safety to the women workers. There are a large number of services, establishments, as Mr. Aggarwal rightly pointed out, the IT sector, where women do work long hours, night hours, because of the the geographic location of India being where it is, because it can serve the US market. When the US is day, then at night is there, so you can service that, the outsourcing businesses and all that. So therefore, it is very important that you make sure that the woman safety becomes a priority area. Otherwise, this move might actually have the adverse effect of excluding women from the workforces. Now, whatever be the positive advantages of this move to create more jobs, if you find that this results in establishments not hiring women, because if you have to hire women, therefore they will have to be provided for additional safety when they have to be picked up. There are rules in many states even now that when a woman worker has to be dropped back, then a woman cannot be left alone in the car.
Right.
There has to be a security guard also. Now, these are all very, very good norms for safety. But at the same time, for the employer's perspective, the employer's psyche, it means there is additional cost.
Cost, yeah.
So therefore, there is a cost challenge. So my fear is that one is about the labor exploitation, and the second is the women's safety concerns will increase cost to some extent, and therefore it should not lead to exclusion of women forces from the labor participation. So that will be an unintended consequence of this facility.
Sure. I want to speak about women's safety, but before that, I want to speak about the cost aspect of it as well, Mr. Dua. For the IT sector, of course, it makes sense because you're dealing with someone in North America, you're dealing with someone in Europe, you're dealing with somebody else in Australia and New Zealand. So from that perspective, it does make sense. But what about 24/7 shops? I mean, does the economics add up really? I mean, how many takers will there be for shops, say, at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m.?
That call has to be taken by the entrepreneur, very simply put. But when you are getting a convenience in an odd hour, you have to be also mentally prepared to pay a little more. And as such convenience stores, which offer you everything 24 hours, they have to have the infrastructure of keeping things cool, keeping things hot, keeping things, cameras and all that kind of security related issues. So as such, they tend to be a little costlier than the mom and pop stores, where you just pull a shutter down and you go up, pull up the shutter if somebody comes in the middle of the night, and middle of the night also, then you say, I don't have change, so leave the note with me. That kind of thing goes on. So here, there is going to be an extra element of the night shift. There is no denial. This law is not saying that if under a particular law overtime work to be done in a night shift has to be paid the same as the day shift. It could well be that this has to be paid extra. In a number of places they do that either in terms of salary or in terms of holidays, saying if you've done a night shift, then next day you don't have to come for work, or you get a longer layoff period at the end of the week, all kinds of different things. So there is a cost to this, but I think what the law always does is enable a particular thing to go forward, not necessarily saying it will definitely happen. There various considerations will come in, one of which will be the cost. And what's the cost to the entrepreneur? And what does he get? What is he able to recover from the market by way of that's number one. Second, there is absolutely this issue of women's security, women's safety is an issue. What this law is saying is, first, as we all know, saying up to 10 persons if you employ, you are exempted from this law. That is the provision today. That provision continues going forward also. So it is meant for the, say, somewhat a larger size or at least a viable size company for which these things are going to apply. Also, as such, the rationalization of labor laws in India, 47 laws I was told are applicable to for establishments to comply with in Delhi. If you want to start doing business, some maybe most of them monitored or implemented by the state governments. We certainly want to reduce those, but because every law means inspection.
Right.
We want to reduce those. We want to, one provision in this Gujarat law is, as you had very rightly pointed out, online registration. Second, this registration is valid forever.
Right.
Earlier, there was a need for revising every year, getting it renewed. Now that's no longer required. Meaning till some basic things change, etc., then you probably, your structure changes probably then. Otherwise, you continue. So the point I'm just trying to make is that yes, too many laws, too many inspectors, we are moving away from there, but that does not mean social security, women's safety and security, those are issues on which we can dispense with the regulations.
Right.
The question is, should a third party be monitoring this, which again would mean cost, or should it be done by the erstwhile, by the lawmakers, regulation makers? Should they be also inspecting? That's $1 million question.
Okay. Mr. Aggarwal, so, a point that Mr. Dua was making, let's deliberate on that now. Do labor laws need to be simplified, and do we need to see a far more streamlined process?
There's no doubt about that. You see, there are about 44 central labor laws which had to be adhered to by all establishments and by all organizations in the formal sector. Now, it becomes extremely difficult to adhere to these 44 labor laws, and that's why government wanted to replace these 44 labor laws with 4 labor codes. And while we were doing that, we thought that it would be a good idea to simplify the process part. And moreover, many of these labor laws were created way back in 30s, 40s, and after independence, and thereafter in 70s. Because at that point of time, the requirements were a little different. Today, in the globalized economy, the requirements are different. So we had to change with time, and we had to make the process simpler, because with the help of IT, you can file a lot of things online. You don't have to inspect each and everything. And idea is to replace this enforcement, which are basically based on inspection, with an enforcement which is based on self-declaration. And that is what we are doing. And in last many years, you must have seen that we have been moving from darkness to light. And there is a definite improvement in the enforcement of labor laws. There is no doubt that things have improved substantially, number one. Coming to the safety and security of women, again, there is huge improvement.
There are laid down procedures really.
Absolutely.
As far as,
as long as
women's
you are
safety is
adhering
concerned.
to SOPs and as per the process laid down in the law, I don't think there is any fear for any woman or any girl to work during the night shift. And more thirdly, for as far as the shops are concerned, nobody is scared that these shops will be open all throughout the night. Why can't we keep them open till 11 o'clock? Because many of now the couples are working. Both of them are working. The women are working, gents are working. So when they come back from office, they would like to go for shopping, to buy provisions and things like that. That can happen only at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. As things stand today, most of the shops are closed by 8 o'clock. So why don't we allow them to remain open till 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, and that will give additional employment as well, and that
Certainly.
will give convenience to a lot of working class.
But Ms. Bhattacharya, on the other side of the coin, you'll also have to ensure that your law and order system and infrastructure too is improved on the whole, so as to ensure that many of these shops are open through the night. Already, law and order mechanism is finding a major, manpower crunch. So how do you sort that out?
Absolutely. I think it's an important question, but I think we have to understand that what this law does is not, it does not issue another diktat that all shops will be open for 24/7. It doesn't.
Absolutely.
It actually takes the government away from this business of deciding and giving permission that how long can you keep the shop open. As long as you have once taken an online permission, that permission of whenever you want to close it, whenever you want to open it, is up to left to. So therefore the first thing is you have to understand that it does not necessarily mean that it will result in the creation of 24/7
It's an
shops.
enabling law.
Absolutely.
So that's very clear.
But
it is an
the
enabling
onus-
provision.
But the onus of safety and security is on the government.
Absolutely. No, the onus of the safety is on the government as well as
The employer.
for the employer. The employer has to make sure that the women employees are not dropped home after 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever is the local rules. The safety rules on this thing are different from state to state. In Delhi, it is you cannot drop a woman employee after 9 o'clock alone. You have to drop her back. Now, in other state, I do not know the rule in Gujarat, but these rules change from state to state. So, therefore, it is the employer's responsibility to take care, and which is why I said in the earlier intervention that it will mean a bit of additional cost for the employers, and the fear would be that the woman participation rate in labor force should not decline as a result of that. So, therefore, but then the benefits of this thing are huge. I mean, we talked about shops, but we don't realize that probably the biggest beneficiary of this move would be the e-commerce segment. The e-commerce segment right now operates, on quick delivery. Now, if you are, you are booking for a product to be delivered at your home, say today, and you get a prime delivery mechanism by which it has to come to you tomorrow, then you have to have a mechanism by which, under the law, legally empowered, they can operate 24/7. Now, these e-commerce outfits are also, in a sense, shops and establishment. So, how do they keep themselves open? So, therefore, by this move, in my view, you have also given a big push to the e-commerce segment of the retail trade, which is growing, which is expanding at a very rapid pace. So, yes, safety is a concern. Yes, labor exploitation is a concern. And I do hope that we have a proper regulatory structure, not a reimposition of the Inspector Raj. Because let's say a shop remains open after 9 o'clock. Now, do you want an inspector to come and visit the shop and say, listen, do you have the permission? That should not happen. There should be a kind of a supervision without any interference.
Right.
And therefore, we need a strong regulatory structure. But at the same time, given the benefit it will create, particularly for the e-commerce rapidly growing e-commerce segment, I think this is a very good thing that has happened. But as you rightly said, we need to be careful about both safety as well as
exploitation
of labor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Closing comments. I'm taking closing
hospitality
comments.
sector, the hospitals,
Yeah.
all of these which are required to work at night are also going to be
will
benefiting
also,
from all
absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. So, yeah, closing comments now from all my guests, starting first with you, Mr. Dua. So, do you see other states now following suit? Because, Gujarat is a different ball game altogether. It's a dry state. Also, law and order is not too much of a problem really in Gujarat. But will the other states have it as easy?
Let's hope so. And I hope just because it's come from a government of a particular political complexion at the center, hence it should be opposed by governments, by states which are not of that party or of that coalition. That should not happen. We have seen in the past these things like this, it's taken as a central diktat, and then states trying to match their political alignments before taking a call. I hope that doesn't happen. It's good for everybody. Certainly risks, regulatory risks, implementation risks of the kind which we've discussed, important. But I do think that the next state to follow could easily be Karnataka. Because online business is so huge there. It could happen there. It could happen in neighboring Tamil Nadu as well.
Sure.
Where a lot of women as such do go to work.
Absolutely. Does the law then needs a little bit of fine tuning as we go along, Mr. Aggarwal?
Yes. That's why when we created this law, this was created as a model law. And this was done after having extensive discussion with all the state governments. And almost all the state governments were on board. And idea was to take advantage of this model law and thereafter tweak it as per their local requirement and then propagate a new law. And certainly, there is no doubt about it, is going to benefit large number of young boys and girls in terms of employment. It is going to give a lot of impetus to our e-commerce, as Mr. Bhattacharya is saying, and it will give a lot of impetus to the economic activity of the country.
All right. Mr. Bhattacharya, close the show for us with the concluding remarks.
My sense is that this is, as Mr. Aggarwal said, that this is a model law. It belongs to the concurrent list. So therefore, ideally, it should not be forced down the throats of the state governments. The state government should actually recognize the inherent merit of this law. So therefore, depending on the actual ground reality in each of the states, different cities, different towns, actually different factors will be at play. So therefore, it is proper and imperative that this law is not rammed down the state apparatuses without any consideration. Each state must take it upon itself that this is an important element in the ease of doing business index in the parameters. So therefore, and also it is the ease of doing shopping index, in my view, if I may say. For the consumer, it is a great experience to have shops open for a longer period of hours, and after a day's hard work, you go into in the evening, you can do your shopping. It becomes an experience in itself. So therefore, I think it is very important that the states should be encouraged to take a considered decision, and it is only then that the states will be able to consult the trading community, the traders, and it is very important that consultation takes place with the trade community, the traders bodies, so that the states can ensure that it is not been enforced on them, but actually in a sense, in a partnership way, it is implemented, so that the full benefits of this law actually accrues to the society, to trade, to the economy. There is no labor exploitation, women's safety is ensured, and the benefits of this law spreads to all segments of the economy.
All right. All right, then with that, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of Policy Watch. And what's emerging out of this discussion is the fact that the bill is a good one, and probably other states will follow suit as well. And the benefits very clearly outweigh the risks as such, and hence it's something that we should all go ahead with. With that, it's a wrap, but I'd like to ask for your suggestions and feedback as well. You can share them with us on policywatch.feedback@gmail.com, and you can also tweet to us using our Twitter handles at FRP09 and at Rajya Sabha TV. Thank you once again to all my guests for joining me on the program today and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.